If you want to make a circle, there are many ways that you can go about it. As long as what you end up with is a real circle. A circle is a line that's all the same distance from the center. Why do you think it's important to keep the string tight? Suppose you were a truck driver, and you earned a living by delivering things. You might want to charge according to how far you had to go. How could you show your customers how you do this with a map? This company draws circles around its home office. They charge the least for A, and more in turn for B, C, and so on. Where else do you find circles used to show points an equal distance from the center? How can you use patterns made of circles? Are these things really circles? The distance around the edge of this wheel is exactly 1 meter. Every time the wheel goes around, it clicks. If you count the clicks, you're also counting the number of meters. Where else do you find circles?
Circumference, 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 diameter, circumference, circumference, diameter, circumference, circumference, radius, circumference, diameter, radius, circumference, circumference.
What's the connection between circumference and diameter? And how would you investigate it? One way to find the circumference of a wheel is to measure how far it travels when it goes around exactly once. These mathematicians looked at a whole range of circular things of different sizes, not just wheels, but also records, coins, and saucepan covers. For each object, they measured both the circumference and the diameter, and then they looked for a connection between them. What would you expect to find?
I think that the circumference is about 3 times the diameter.
The circumference is 3 times the amount of the diameter, roughly.
We found out that if you divide the circumference by the diameter, it comes out 3.3 or above or below.
Every time you have the diameter, I figured out that you've got to multiply it by 3 to get the circumference, no matter how big the circle is. And this shows on the chart I've done that it's only slightly over or slightly under, and that's because of the measurements. I think if we had better measurements, if we did it really accurate, I think it would come to 3 exactly, every time.
Is that right? Should it be exactly 3? The ancient Greeks worried about this question. In fact, they went around in circles thinking about the relationship between circumference and diameter. They realized that when they divided the circumference by the diameter, they always got the same answer, just over 3. They decided this number ought to have a nickname. But what nickname could they use? And then they were struck by a bright idea. They called it by the Greek letter pi. For hundreds of years, mathematicians tried to calculate pi exactly. In 1610, Ludolf van Ceulen, after terrific effort, worked out pi to 35 decimal places. When he died, they were engraved on his tombstone. In 1853, William Shanks thought he'd calculated 707 places. But he'd made a mistake. The last 179 were wrong. Now, pi has been calculated to more than 134 million decimal places. But we still don't know its exact value, because it's a number that goes on forever.
So, you just watched 2 videos. Maybe a little bit cheesy, but they get the point across. The first one told you the definition of a circle. I hope you saw lots of different ways that you could make the circle. Would love to see some of you use the ruler and the thumbtack or the nail and move the ruler around and see if you can create a circle with a straight ruler. It's a super cool activity. If you do, please bring it to me so I can hang it in the room. If you can't remember how to do it, rewind the video and go back to where they pushed the ruler up against the nail and just drew straight lines. Okay. Then we sang a little cheesy song about circumference and diameter and radius, and now it's time to put this in your journal. What I'd like you to have in your journal is the definition of these 4 words and a picture of them. Whether you write the word to go here or whether you write the definition, however is going to help you remember best. The circumference is the distance around the circle. The diameter is the distance through the middle of the circle. The radius starts at the center and goes to any point on the circle. And then a chord is a line segment that touches 2 points anywhere on the circumference of the circle. And boys and girls, the very coolest thing about each one of these 3 vocabulary words is that there is an infinite number of diameters in a circle. A diameter cuts the circle in half. And there is an infinite number of diameters in every circle. And since there's an infinite number of diameters, it's also true of radii. The plural of radius is radii. And so you could have as many lines here to infinity. And then a chord, as long as it touches here and touches here or touches here and touches here, as long as it touches 2 points on the outside of the circle, it's a chord, which tells us that if I drew it right through the center, it would be a chord, but it would also be a diameter. So we call this sometimes a special chord, because this has to touch 2 sides of the circle, but it also has to go through the center. So, 4 vocabulary words. You've got those in your journal, and now I want to tell you 2 more things you need to remember. The relationship between radius and diameter. These are called formulas. So a diameter is 2 r's, or the diameter is 2 times the radius, or the radius is half of the diameter, or the radius is the diameter divided by 2, or the diameter divided by 2. We can write this numerous ways because if you remember from our multiplying fractions unit, multiplying by 1/2 is the same as dividing by 2. The diameter is twice the radius, or 2 times the radius, or the radius plus another radius. Now, my favorite way to remember this came from a student who told me that I could take 2 r's. If I took an r that looks like this, and I took an upside down r that looks like this, and I put the r's together, I could make a D, because 2 r's is a D. And then he went as far to say, and if you erase half of the D, you're left with an R. So however you want to remember it, the diameter is 2 radii, and the radius is half of the diameter. And tomorrow, we've got super fun activities planned for you to figure out the relationship or the ratio between the circumference and the diameter. See you there.